Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multi-family real estate investor, Barri Griffiths. Now, we're joined by Scott Krone again. Hey, Scott, how are you doing?
It's good to be back. Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely, my pleasure. We just recorded the first part, which was a great interview and a great chat, and we had a great conversation. Really enjoyed that. So I recommend anyone who hasn't listened to that, go back and listen to that. We talk about self-storage, opportunity funds, about when Scott started in the 90s, what interest rates were like, what inflation was like, and fast forward what's different to today. So please go back and check all that out. But today we're going to take a deeper dive into self-storage and self-storage as an asset class. What is self-storage as an investment, looking at it from investment? I'm sure most people understand what is self-storage, right? It's storage. It's where you store stuff that you don't need or you want to keep for a future date or whatever it is, right? But from an investment standpoint, can you kind of give a little synopsis in terms of what it is and how it looks like from an investment standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, what we talked about before was that it's an asset class. I think it's sort of the ugly stepsister of real estate investing, in the sense that it's not the sexy appeal that most asset classes have. But for me, the most basic concept of this is, as I mentioned before, is apartments without toilets and sinks. I mean, it's like no plumbing. So it's the most basic form of a multifamily because it's just a box, right? It's a 5x5, 5x10, or 10x10, type box, corrugated metal. And the difference is that we can change those configurations in order to meet supply and demand. But from an investment point of view, we really classified as three different asset classes. And when people think of like asset classes, like a C asset class in multifamily, they think, okay, not so good of a neighborhood. And if they think of a class A, they think of it's a really good asset class. And in self-storage, the C class is like first generation self-storage, probably out in the country, more rural, your classic drive-up facility where, it may or may not have a fence around it. It may not be paved. It might be just gravel. But they're smaller units, typically between 50 and call it 100, 200 type units. And we equate that to like to like a penny stock. You're just going to get a consistent yield out of it. It's not going to blow your socks out of the water. It's not going to be your massive retirement fund, but it's going to have a consistent yield for you. A class B would be more in the suburban market, similar to class C. They might look the same, might be fenced, might be climate controlled, but typically between like 100 to 400 units and drive up type facilities. And we consider that to be like a blue chip stock. And so you're just going to get a consistent yield out of them. You might have a little bit of growth appreciation out of them, but they're going to be a solid performer in every type of market. And then class A is what we've been focusing on, which is larger facilities, more urban markets. So typically over 400 units and fully climate controlled, and you can actually drive into these facilities. And to me, they're like growth stocks. So you're going to see both appreciation as well as cash flow. And so for a lot of people, the first thing is determining which of the asset classes that you're really trying to go to, which one meets up with your goals and objectives in terms of like equating it to stocks.
And you said that for the first two, it's a drive up. What does a drive up facility mean? What do you
like
mean?
Rows of lockers where you see the garage doors on the outside and you literally drive your car up to it, you roll up your locker and you unload it right into the facility, as opposed to a drive-in facility. You will drive into the building, unload it on carts, and then transport it to your locker.
And that's because of the location, I'm guessing, right?
It's location and size. Some of our tallest facilities, 8 stories plus a basement, so 9 stories. We have 102,000 square feet in Milwaukee, and we have over 800 lockers in there. And so it was actually, we got historical tax credits on that project because we were able to maintain the existing building.
Wow. Thank you for explaining all the different assets. I didn't realize that. I would have thought the same thing. I thought the location, in terms of, is it in the hood or is it in the nicest neighborhood in the city, would dictate what class it is. Is it A, B, or C? But obviously, you described that differently. You said that you guys focus on the A. What was the reason behind that? Why did you guys go after the A type assets?
Well, we are going after B's and C's as well, but anytime that we're going after, we're looking for value add. We're looking to improve them, either to add units me as a developer are always looking to maximize property. And so for us, we're always looking to improve. So if I can buy a building well below replacement cost. So for instance, we bought a building in downtown Dayton that had a tremendous amount of construction going on around it, multifamily, mixed use, townhomes, condos, all sorts of stuff. It was incredible to see. And we bought 90,000 square feet for $1 million. I can't build that building for that price. And so for me, it's a 5-story building, 6 with a basement. And the fact that we were able to get it for well below replacement cost, we bought it for like $11 a square foot. Like I said, I can't build it for that. So right off the bat, I have a competitive advantage compared to other new construction, because even with my rehabilitation cost, my conversion cost, I'm still going to be below my competition with regard to if it was brand new.
And then you said value add, most people are familiar with value add in multifamily, right? You buy something that's rents are below market, you fix it up, and then you get the higher rents, and you maybe have something as well that has operational inefficiencies, right? That from a management standpoint that you can improve, the expenses are too high, there's tons of deferred maintenance, those type of stuff, right? But in self-storage, when you say value add, what do you look for in value? What is the opportunity to add value to these properties in self-storage?
A lot of those same things exist. I mean, a lot of facilities that are owned by mom and pops, may not have raised rents in 2 or 3 years, and they may not be as tight on their expenses because it's sort of like an account where they can just pull cash out of it, right? And so they might not be the most conscientious about making sure it's running finely, and because it's their life. But so there is the value add in terms of operation and improving the operations, but it's also expanding, adding more more units, adding more doors. And so we will look to see if there's, does the market warrant expansion? Is there an opportunity to grow that on the property? Is there room for those sorts of things? So, we were just sent a project today that, it's, I think, on for $700,000, where it has the ability to expand, more units onto the site. So the first thing we're going to look for is, does the market warrant it? Is there demand that is not being met in that neighborhood? So we'll do a feasibility study. We'll do a demographic study on that specific location to see, does it warrant us adding more units?
Very interesting. And the cool thing about self-storage, I think, as well, is that the cost of building some extra is pretty low, right? It's not like trying to build extra multifamily units where you need the toilets, you need sewer lines, you need obviously you need electricity, but you don't need the same type of stuff. So it's a lot easier to build out that extra units, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just the cost per unit. I mean, if we're building for $9,000, I mean, compared to like multifamily, I mean, 45,000 and up per unit, right? So there's just a massive difference in terms of cost basis.
Yeah. And out of interest, I know every market is different, every asset is different, but in general, are cap rates higher in self-storage, or are they kind of equal to what multifamily is?
I don't think you're going to. The only time I've seen like 4 and 5% cap compression is when, the big REITs were buying them for like $1 billion. Blackstone just bought some. Warren Buffett just bought some. Extra Space expanded their portfolio. Those were all at 4.5 caps, which is the top multifamily. You might see a 3, 4.5. But conservatively speaking, and we model things out at 6, 6.5. If it's a class B or C, it might be an 8 or 9. And so I wouldn't say that it's too terribly different than multifamily.
Yeah. I think you struggle to get a C-class asset for an 8 cap now, unless you're in really rural somewhere, right? A lot of stuff in the Midwest that I'm looking at as well. You're talking, 6, maybe below for a class C property. So that is attractive. And with that, obviously, it becomes, you get greater cash flow, right? And is self-storage in general, I know you mentioned different asset classes, is it more of a cash flow play in terms of the returns that you get from it?
If you're a B and C and you're buying just an existing facility, absolutely. But when we're building it out, when we're creating them, we'll be buying the asset predominantly like a 12 or 15 cap equivalent, and then selling it at a 6 cap. So there's huge cap compression just upon the fact that how inexpensively we're buying the property, and the fact that what our costs are comparatively to what it would be.
Then in terms of returns, obviously, again, each asset class is different, but just to give people an idea who might not be aware, what kind of cash on cash do you aim for? What kind of IRRs do you kind of hope to achieve?
Well, we won't go forward with anything unless we can see a 20%, rate of return for our investment. We just want to make sure that, if we're developing, you have to be patient because it's a 3 to 5 year play, that it's going to have a healthy rate of return behind it. And so, if we're looking at a typical facility, if it's like, call it over 700, 800 units, you could be generating over $1 million in cash flow annually off of the thing. And your operational expenses could be somewhere around 30, 35%. And so, you're producing a good yield off of these things.
And you mentioned the expenses, that when you're analyzing these deals, are they a lot easier than multifamily? Because obviously you just probably have a lot of set costs, right? You don't have much, if any, repairs and maintenance. Your electricity bill is going to be pretty
there are some. You'd be surprised that people still don't know how to drive always the best and drive into something, but
really?
but they don't leave the sink running or something like that. But there are repairs that we have to do. I mean, someone just ran into our garage door and tried taking out the garage door. So that's obviously something we have to fix. But our biggest costs are labor and taxes. Other than that, you have your utility bills, you have, very minimal repair and maintenance comparatively. And, once you're stabilized, your marketing goes down tremendously. So, right now we're very heavy in marketing just because we're in the lease up stage of a lot of our facilities.
And I'm sure legal costs as well. And, you don't have to, what is the sort of, it's not an eviction. I don't know what it is. If someone doesn't pay, how do you guys handle that? How do you, if someone hasn't paid their rent?
You give them the notice, and if they don't fulfill the notice, that you can literally overlock them immediately. And so they have to come and pay to you in order to get their lock back. So when you overlock, there's 2 latches on the door. And so, our lock supersedes theirs. So even if they undid theirs, they still wouldn't be able to get their stuff. So we have that ability of overlocking, and in order to get the lock off, they have to come pay us. And if they don't, then the stuff can go up for auction, or just most of the time thrown away.
Yeah. So how do you guys decide if it's worth going for auction? Are you guys allowed to go through it, or is it like a TV show?
Yeah, it is easy. It is not as sexy as the TV show. I mean, the best thing I've ever heard, and I have a friend who has a facility out in Massachusetts in a rural location. And he said this guy put a BMW model 2002. So not the year, but, the model 2002 Ti. And, this is a classic car right now. And the guy put it out in the self-storage facility, and then he got a DUI. And he couldn't take public transportation out there. He couldn't pick it up. He couldn't drive. And so, my friend was like, "Hey man, you haven't been paying." He's like, "I know, just keep the car." Most of the time it's, people are starting files or, other things that, it's hard to put a value in. Some people enjoy the auctions, and other people, it's just, we just throw the stuff away.
Yeah. And is there a deposit with that? So how do you cover that cost, or is it just a cost?
No, there's deposits, but when you move in, it's like first month free, right? I mean, we're giving you a lot of incentives and reasons to come and move in. So it's a great deal for you at the beginning. And then, once you're in there and settled, then we'll begin raising the pricing in hopes that you stay. Most of the time people will stay for about 3 years. And so it's a sticky investment. A lot of times people are correlated to their leases. So if they don't like moving, then they're going to stay longer.
And what kind of leases do you guys have them?
Starts off with 6 months.
Okay. And then from there, does it go month to month? And with the leases as well, I guess what I'm getting to is the pricing as well, right? You can change the pricing a lot more with self-storage.
Yeah, we'll change it every 6 months.
Okay. And that's usually upcharge them, or not upcharge them, but you raise the rents essentially every 6 months.
Yep, exactly.
Very cool. Very cool. What technologies are you guys implementing these days? Are all your facilities manned, unmanned? Does it depend?
Most of them are manned. Our one in Maine is not manned. We have call centers, and obviously all the reservations can be done through the internet. So, we've had to go a lot of paperless type technology to get leases in place, those sorts of things. But, a lot of our projects, we're making them green. We're implementing a lot of green technology, obviously raising the installation values of the facilities, making them a lot more energy efficient with respect to heating and cooling compared to older facilities. And so there's a lot of technology there that we're implementing. plus the access and the security. So everybody has their own individual key code in order to get in. So we know we can track who's going in there. It's all being logged to their specific unit. And so those are the things that we're doing. So if someone's not paying, then we can cut them off, and they have to come to the sales center and, you know, talk with us.
Out of interest, what temperature are most of these set to? You know, you hear about heating and cooling, but what temperature? Is it nice and cool 72, or is it, well, you know, nice and comfortable? What temperature
we'll set it between 60 and 80. So 60 during the winter and 80 during the summer. But more importantly, you're controlling the humidity. You know, that's the biggest factor. You know, obviously in a place like where you are in Vegas, there's not as much humidity. You're just trying to cut down on the heat gain. But if you're like in the South, our Louisville project, it's incredibly humid. So we're controlling the humidity just so things aren't expanding and contracting.
Very interesting. Is there anything that we haven't covered about self-storage that you'd like to mention or bring up before we cut?
Well, I think that it's just incredibly a lot. It's a retail business, and so it's as well as a real estate play. It's very unique in that sense that it's both a retail business as well as real estate, and because of that, you can model it out very well. It's very predictable pattern. And so, you know, each of these things that we know that, you know, for instance, our lease up is going to be at least 3% per month. And so, you know, we're focusing on those sorts of things where we can analyze it very specifically, how it's doing. We can track our marketing, our clicks, our conversion rates, all those sorts of things. So it's a lot vastly different than when we were in multifamily.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for explaining all that. It's so much good stuff. I've learned a lot today, so I really appreciate you coming on the show. But before we wrap up, if people want to get in touch with you, people want to find out more about what you've got going on, how can they do so?
Well, again, thank you very much for having us. And if someone does come across a facility, I know we offered a feasibility report in the last call, but if someone comes across something they think might be good for self-storage, a location, if they reach out to us and mention the show, we will go through that location with them. We'll do a free study and then we won't do the full feasibility, but we'll give you a sense like, yeah, this does make sense or this does not make sense and why you should or should not go through it. I mean, I've had people come up to me and say, oh, I have the perfect location for self-storage. I'm going to put, 100,000 square feet of it. I'm like, well, have you looked at the demographics? And they're like, oh no, but there's no self-storage around me. I'm like, well, why don't you give me the address and I'll just check it out for you. Excuse me. And, they give me the address. There's like 18 facilities in 2 miles. And I'm like, whatever you do not put self-storage there. Just do not, because it's not going to work out for you. And so, if they mention the show, we will go through that. If they want us to sign a non-disclosure, non-circumvent, we'll do that. This industry is too small. We're not looking to steal anything. We're not looking to, go around anybody in terms of a location. But we're more than happy to sign that if it makes people feel more comfortable. And we'll just tell them, we'll give them, raw data and say, what the market suggests for that location. And so they can reach out to us at info@codamg.com. That's info@coda, CODA, MG is for management group.com.
Fantastic. Well, Scott, thank you so much once again. This is a fantastic 2-part series, so make sure you check out both parts of that and check out the website as well. So thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I had a great time.
Me too. Thank you.